Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Tory Kittles of Sons of Anarchy, True Detective, and The Equalizer is starring in the new thriller Among the Beasts. I spoke to Kittles and director Matthew Newton about the film, which hits select theaters and video on demand today. Hey, Matthew Newton and Tory Kittles. Hey, thanks so much for joining us on WTOP in Washington, D.C.
Thanks for
Jason.
having us.
We are here talking your new movie. It's called Among the Beasts. It releases today. Guys, is it on streaming? Is it limited theatrical? How do we see it real quick?
Oh, we're going to be we're in select theaters, 20 theaters across the nation. We're also on SVOD the same day. You can pre-order it right now on iTunes and on Amazon. So we'll be everywhere tomorrow. So hopefully people will go check it out.
Okay, awesome. Yes, I encourage everyone to check it out. I wanted to start by just commending you guys. I just watched it over the weekend, and so I feel like so many filmmakers nowadays are in such a rush to tell their stories, especially mainstream movies. They seem to move at such a clip, and this one, I like this style of filmmaking where it's like a slow burn thriller, and then by the end, the action totally erupts on you, and it's worth the ride. But I love I want to compliment your patient storytelling. Before we get any further, I guess one of you guys give me the basic premise. Tell our listeners the basic log line premise setup here.
You go, Tory.
All right. Among the Beasts is the story of a flawed hero, a former Marine dealing with PTSD who teams up with the gangster's daughter to go after a kidnapped kid. Absolutely.
And why was that such I guess since we'll start with Tory and we'll get to Matthew in a second, but Tory, why was that such a interesting role for you to want to take when you read that on the page? Why was that so juicy? Is it because you have sort of the Marine backstory? He's got an arc, a flaw to overcome himself, and not to mention the A story, just the really cool mystery and all that. But what was it about the role that really you dug?
Well, I tend to gravitate towards characters that are flawed. I love the flawed hero. I feel like we all are the flawed heroes of our own stories. And I'm also from a military family. My mother was a captain in the military. Both my grandfathers served in wars. And so anytime a military character comes my way, I give it an extra special reverence. And I wanted to work with Matthew. I'd seen a film he did called Who We Are Now with the great Julianne Nicholson. And I love the performances he got out of everybody in that film. And so I was really excited about it. And then the fact that we got to explore what it would be like in real life to go looking for a loved one who's gone missing, what you'd have to do to even get a lead on where they might be, what lines would you cross, and what would you do if you came face to face with the people who took them? How does that change you? Where does your moral compass go? So there were a lot of elements in this film that were really attractive to me to jump into that space.
Oh yeah, and that moral compass, like you're saying, I love when sort of his Marine backstory and the A story of the finding the missing the kidnapped cousin. I like when those lines sort of blur and come and intersect. Maybe I don't want to spoil anything. There's like a waterboarding scene. Let's say the lengths that he will go to tap into maybe some military, maybe even some torture stuff to get a beat on where she might be. It's fascinating. It's fascinating to watch those overlap.
Well, as we're talking to people, one of the things that's really connecting is that question: what would you do if someone took your loved one? How far would you go? That's something that's really resonated with people, because I think that, we all live in this world and the world can be dangerous. And you think about these things, especially where kids are concerned, like, how far would you go to protect an innocent child?
Oh, if anyone saw Hugh Jackman in Prisoners, you'll know a father will go as far as they need to go to find their kid, or Liam Neeson, I guess we could say, taken. But it's sort of all in that similar vein, which I dig those kind of movies. All right, well, Matthew, how did you come up with this story? Because you wrote and directed it, but Tory mentioned that he saw Who We Are Now. Of course, From Nowhere was your big one before that, I guess. What was it? Did it win South by Southwest Audience Award?
It did. Yeah, it won the Audience Award at South by Southwest. Yeah, we were very thrilled.
Okay, cool. So take me, not to make you, recap your whole career in 30 seconds, but, but you know what I mean? Like, I want to know sort of, to get from nowhere to who we are now to this film, like what's sort of like your creative process here? Like how did you stumble on this idea?
So when I made From Nowhere, which is about three undocumented kids in the Bronx, kind of trying to stay in the country and finish high school at, the height of that period to about 2015, when there was all those issues came to the forefront, I kind of discovered that if I grounded the story in some kind of issue that meant something to me, that had made my heart tick, it just made the storytelling a lot more potent. And so, I made that film, and then I made Who We Are Now, which is about a woman getting out of prison trying to get her child back. And this one for me, like Tory said, it's about what you would really do in this situation, not what would happen in the movies and how everyone has a parking spot whenever they want to pull up outside.
This one, you leave a pretend car down the road by the lake.
Exactly. Yeah. No. So I wanted to make a story about what that would really feel like and how heavy that kind of experience would be. But mostly I wanted to tell the story of a flawed hero who's trying to run away from, some of the mistakes he's made and transcend those mistakes in order to, try and put some good back in the world. And this situation he's presented with, which gives him a purpose in life. And it's a bit of a dark flip, but it's, this in a weird way gives him a sense of life and positivity and gets his blood pumping again, thinking that he might be able to save someone's life. So that was kind of what I was thinking about when I wrote it. And then I saw a movie called Dragged Across Concrete, and I saw Tory in that movie, and I kind of discovered, I'd seen his work. Obviously, he's been doing great work for a lot of years, but something in that film really grabbed me, and I just went, this has got to be the guy. There's something about him that is perfect for this man. And, I think I called, we made the call about a week later, and a couple of days later, Tory and I were on the phone, and he thankfully, loved the script, and, we've been wrestling with this thing ever since.
Oh yeah, well, Tory's definitely the right guy for this role. How about the casting of Lola Libe Barar? She obviously is, I don't want to say a dual lead, but pretty close to in this movie. It's such an important performance here.
Absolutely.
Talk about going why was she the right one?
Well, I met with Libe in New York, and the thing about that character of Lola is it has a couple of, there's an easy access point to it. She's a gangster's daughter. There's a pretty simple way she could be played. And we did some auditions in New York, and a lot of these wonderful actors came in and gave, great straight-laced interpretations of what that character could be. But when Leibs came in, there was something about, there was a determination and intelligence, a ferocity to her, which is all kind of inside this very kind, quiet person. And to me, there was like an internal strength that I thought would be great to discover as the movie goes on. She doesn't walk on screen and you go, oh, wow, this is a badass. I can't believe how Australian I sounded then, badass. This is a badass. This is a tough girl who's going to take names and kick ass. What's that great line? I came here to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of bubblegum.
All out of bubblegum.
It's not that character. So we kind of discover her strength. And by the time, we're at the end of the film, which obviously we won't talk about, but, by the time they're at the end of that journey, we discover what that internal strength is that she has. And I just thought Libe had so much to offer. And it was so much fun because, I have a way of working on set, which is a little playful and, non-traditional, and the cameras are all kind of kept away from the actors. And I try and create an environment which is very organic. Tory can tell me whether I fail or succeed at this, but I want to make it feel like, for the actors, like we're not really making a movie. We're just, it's play, and you kind of try and go out of your way to take away the stakes. And Libe is a really wonderful, professional killer actor. And it was really fun breaking that down.
And to add to that, I think, one of the reasons that the performances, are what they are in the film, that there was such a space that we could create, like Matt talks about the environment. It's like walking into a real situation, but there are boundaries and everybody's safe enough to feel like you can go to whatever depths you need to go to get the performance. Like everybody trusted each other. Libe she came in and she was just ready to play. And so, a lot of things we would just go for on the day, and everybody felt like, let's take the biggest risk. And that's because of Matt and how he deals with actors.
What's great too is what's great. You have these moments where, a couple of days into doing this, where, I don't rehearse and I place multiple cameras around make it feel very organic. And a couple of days in, you'll have actors like Lib after one take started improvising and playing. I think she started messing with messing with Tory and pushing back. And after the take, she kind of looked and she had this look in her eye like she was a kid. And she was like, that was fun. We do it again. And that, to me, that's what, that gives me a buzz going to lunch, because you see someone, alive and enjoying it. And really, I like to empower people to, create on their own. I don't want to, I'm not a marionette at all. Like I really want to encourage people to explode. And working with an actor like Tory, you don't need to tell him twice. And that's what I love, we hit the ground running. And Tory became a bit of an insider for me too, because, it was great to give him some things to, plot around the other people, which was perfect for the character of LT as well.
Oh, yeah. And also, and we won't go through the whole cast, we don't have time, but, I did want to give a shout out to Sarunas Jackson as AJ, especially at the end that you're talking about, which we won't spoil, but there, there's a whole thing where he's, trying to, I guess, put on a performance within the performance, for the climax there. And they're asking him what his name AJ means and all that stuff. It is a sort of a performance that surprisingly, it snuck up on me and tugged at my heart a little bit by the end.
Great. Sharonus is fantastic, man. He's fantastic.
He's so great in the film.
And talk about that finale again, without spoiling where it is or anything, but just sort of the power as a filmmaker of parallel action, where we can see something going on in one location and something else happening in a very other nearby location, and just talk about how that can really build so much drama and suspense. Like, we're on the edge of our seats as you're cutting back and forth between those two locations. Like, I'm trying to figure out a way to talk about it without talking about it.
Our protagonists are dealing with different obstacles simultaneously. Why don't we say that? And then, we're cutting between the two. It's funny, like a lot of things in filmmaking, their practical concerns have creative outcomes. Like from watching silent films, it's always good. If you got a chase scene, it's always good to have two people chasing, because you have something to cut between, and you can take out time, put in time, and really manipulate, not to sound too highbrow, but what's the Tarkovsky book's called sculpting in time. And I think time is what we use in film. That's kind of our clay. And having that is a great practical thing to have, but also given the situation that they're in, there are two enemies. There's the actual enemy they have to face, and there's also the enemy of making sure that the people they're trying to save and take care of are still alive and well. So they're kind of fighting both of those enemies simultaneously, trying to, save and trying to avenge in a way, or eliminate the threat. And so, but being able to cut between the two, you just keep reminding the audience of what they're up against and also what's at stake. And you're doing that at the same time. So it was kind of a useful thing to have. And also it seemed, from all the research I did, it seemed very practical. There's usually, when people are being kept in situations like that, there's usually two locations.
Listen to you sculpting in time, Tarkovsky, Russian.
I know, darling. I know. No.
I freaking love it. We're 3 seconds away from an Andrei Rublev digression. But I think there is something to I guess it goes back to Eisenstein, right? With the whole Soviet montage era and the silent era. And then now you're bringing it up to sculpting in time. And now we are to the present day. God, I don't want to give flowers to Russia right now, because they're causing so much trouble in the world right now.
But no, we don't do that. But we should give flowers to our combat veterans who showed up. In the film, and they generously gave their stories, their personal stories, and some of them ended up in the film. Like, they gave us a level of authenticity that we would not have had, for the film without them. So that's
a great point.
Are you talking about at the bar? Is it like a VFW hall with Jim Norton and everybody?
Yeah, absolutely. They invited us into their world, and that stuff is very real with them. And Jim Norton comes into that scene, and he put everybody at ease, with his humor and his comedy. And those
Oh,
guys,
he saved my life that day. I mean, those
yeah,
guys were fantastic, but those are real guys, and they're real stories that they're telling at the bar, and they're all real veterans. And Tory, was amazing. He can you can drop Tory anywhere in the world, and he will adapt. And so he's a brilliant actor, and also just I mean, I know we're sitting on the same. I would say this if he wasn't on the call, but he's just he's got a brilliant social mind, and so he's great. But Jim in that scene when he sat at that bar and he just started riffing with these guys because he doesn't give a damn. And he's used to riffing with the greatest comedic minds in the country, and he just started asking these guys questions and joking around with them. And this, it's like anyone in that situation. They don't want reverence. They don't want you to, they don't want to be treated in any way. You sort of thank you for your service is great. I mean, I'm quoting something that one of them said to me. Thank you for your services is great, but then let's just let's have a beer and settle in. That's their attitude. And so Jim was a great help that day, as was Tory. But those guys were amazing. They invited us in. They talked to Tory and I about the experience, and that was their actual real social club. And yeah, they really made us feel at home. It was very special. It's a very special part of LT's world too, because this is a chosen family, a family that is often thrust upon these men and women of service, but becomes, they're brothers and sisters, and you kind of don't get kicked out of that family ever. Family is family forever. And so you see the interaction between these guys, and that's what LT has, and also ultimately what he's lost, in the death of his great friend Bobby, a death that has consequences for how LT is now living his life.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it's such a good point. Those veteran scenes and everything, it really grounds the movie in sort of like an authenticity where that pays off later when you do see maybe like the waterboarding or later with the gunplay at the end. Like, it's all of that would not feel earned if you hadn't set all that up earlier with the VFW stuff. So it works. It really grounds it.
Oh, thanks, Jason.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, before we run, I do want to ask Tory Kittles about some of his other previous work real quick, because I mean there's so many good stuff. I mean, I'll remember you were Frederick Douglass in Harriet. You were in the first season of True Detective, which is still one of the greatest single seasons of television ever. Sons of Anarchy, so much stuff. But do you have a role that you're particularly proud of looking back on?
I'm particularly proud of LT because look, we were thrust with we were hit with so many obstacles making this film.
Yeah.
And shooting pre-COVID, a lot of personal things happened during the making of the film, and Matt continued to just push ahead, and he really led the charge. And the collaboration that we got from all of everybody, including the cast, Lee Bays, Sharonis, Jim, Jeremy Holm, Kate Easton, everybody was collectively on the same page. And so I'm so proud of this movie. We didn't have a lot of resources, but the resources we had, we had the focus and attention and the talents of everybody involved. So I'm very proud of that. So this is coming out.
Get Rich is pretty dope, bro.
Get Rich and Die Trying. Listen, when you get to go to work with 50 Cent, I get asked the question all the time, like, hey, did you ever think that 50 Cent would take over television? And I can honestly say, yeah, I did. I don't think I've ever met a more disciplined, focused guy. He works really hard, and he's very smart. And that was a lot of fun. It was also one of those experiences where you get brought into this world, sort of like Among the Beast. You get brought into this world and you're around real people who are living these circumstances, and it influences the performance. So, and then I also have another job that is very special to me. I'm on the Equalizer Sunday nights.
Yeah, with Queen Latifah.
With Queen Latifah. And that
who was awesome at the Grammys the other night, by the way.
Amazing.
How amazing was she at the Grammys? I was watching the Grammys, and I knew she was going, and I still was pinching myself going, I get to go kiss her and love her and hug on her this week. That's amazing. Sometimes it feels totally like a dream. And that was one of those moments.
Also, can I say, to stand out in that company, I mean, that whole number was absolutely phenomenal.
Oh my God. It was like
but
surprise
Queen,
after surprise after surprise. You're like, oh my God, how'd they get all these people in the same room?
I know, and everyone is an A plus. But honestly, Queen comes out and she's like, as I said, to kind of draw your eyes in and be like, that's Queen. That's a big ask to stand out in that company. And I thought she was incredible.
She's incredible. She's so magnificent. Like, she's so magnificent. It's for lack of better words, magnificent is one I like to use, because just she pulls you into her presence, and she does it with such a loving and gracious way. She's so smart. And it's just, it's crazy that I get to work with her.
I think it's crazy that Tory Kittles is sitting at home watching the Grammys and gets to look up and see Queen Latifah doing this mashup at the Grammys. And he's like, I work with her. And then also in the past year, you're sitting there watching the Super Bowl and you're seeing your 50 Cent hanging upside down singing. And you're like, hey, I work with him too.
yeah.
Oh man, talk about two great hip hop montages in a row. Last year, we're spoiled in the past year of that kind of stuff. But hey, real quick, I'm a huge fan of Dee Reese. I know you're in Bessie, and obviously we mentioned True Detective, and I'm going to try to see if we can tie that back into Matthew as well. Like, memories, not just memories, but I guess compare sort of the filmmaking, directing approaches of a Dee Reese versus a Cary Fukunaga or Matthew Newton. What did sort of all these great filmmakers have in common, or if there's anything that they do differently? I would love to sort of hear. I geek out on the filmmaking stuff, if you can't tell, so I would love to hear sort of their approaches.
I think that there's one thing that I can absolutely say that the three of them have in common is that they create a space for you to thrive in. Right now, when you ask me about Bessie, I start thinking about the late Michael K. Williams, who was in that film, and some of the scenes that we got to shoot, especially those dinner table scenes with Queen Latifah, who led the charge in that movie. That film took 20 years to get made. Queen Latifah pushed that thing along until she just wouldn't be denied. And that's sort of the spirit we had with Among the Beasts. We just wouldn't be denied. It's like, hey, we're going to go make our movie. But all three of the filmmakers that you mentioned, they're confident enough in their vision also to trust you when they know you've landed it. Like there's sometimes where people want to do so many different things because they aren't sure of what they want. And that's fine. But, Matt, Cary, Dee, they're the type of directors who will just come up and whisper a little something in your ear that will add a flavor or a color that can just illuminate your performance even more. But it's so subtly done. And I think they have great eyes for talent. And I'm not saying that because they've all cast me.
But man, he really knows how to pick a talent, I tell you.
but no, I think they have great eyes for talent. Joe Schumacher was like that as well. Who I got a chance to work with, and Jim Sheridan. Matt reminds me a lot of working with Jim Sheridan. Like he's very spontaneous and very in the moment, but it's playful, but it's really focused play. And you just sort of give over into the moment. And all of those filmmakers you mentioned, they have that thing that they make you better. You get to work with Dee Reese, she makes you better. You get to work with Cary Fukunaga, he makes you better. You get to work with Matthew Newton, he makes you better.
Well, and now you are better having starred in Among the Beasts. It comes out today, February 10th, in select theaters around the country, and of course everyone can get it on video on demand. Hey, thank you so much, both of you guys. This was so much fun. I could talk all day with you, but we'll let you run.
Jason, I love your podcast too, man. I think it's great.
Wait, you actually?
Oh yeah, I think it's great. I love the questions you asked. I love the fact that we can reference Tarkovsky like two pretentious morons. No, I think I love your podcast. I think I love the questions you ask, the guests you get. It's great, man.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.